Brigade, which is the largest brigade of infantry in the IDF, and they were attacked by an Arab who came out of, what I understand, the Arab-controlled, PA-controlled town of Tulkarm. He rammed them with his truck, and unfortunately, overnight, these two soldiers died. The terrorists then fled into the neighboring PA-controlled town of Nablus or Shechem, where apparently he turned himself over to the Palestinian Authority. Now, is Israel going to get their hands on this terrorist? That remains to be seen. But from what I understand, the PA is now watching over this terrorist, but we've seen the PA's revolving door for many, many years, taking in terrorists and then just letting them go just a few days later. So, and as far as I'm concerned, this man is still on the loose. The PA continues to support terrorists. They still operate their pay-to-slay program, which the U.S. Congress passed a law against funding the Palestinian Authority, as long as they operate this program, which incentivizes Arabs to go out and murder Jews, whether they're soldiers or civilians. So unfortunately, two soldiers, it's all part of the war in Gaza. It's all the same. It's just a different front, the front of Judea and Samaria. And of course, you have the northern border and everything going on in Gaza. So very, very sad day today. Two soldiers there, and then an additional soldier was killed fighting against Hamas in Gaza as well, a paratrooper, if I'm not mistaken.
Israel saying that it has gained control, seized control of a pretty important corridor. Can you tell me about the corridor, where it's located, I believe, over at the Gaza-Egypt border?
Yeah, this is known as the Philadelphia corridor. It's an 8.7-mile road, essentially, from east to west, west to east, which is the buffer between Hamas-controlled Gaza and Egypt. Israel used to control, before 2005, used to control that very highly essential, important road. In 2005, Israel turned it over to the Palestinian Authority, and then Hamas initiated their violent coup in 2007. So you have Hamas on one side in Gaza, you have Egypt supposed to be in control on the other side. And many, many years ago, Egypt actually did take important steps in order to stop to block those tunnels, even flooded some of those tunnels coming from Egypt into Gaza, which provide weapons and supplies to Hamas. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years, we've seen that Egypt has been extremely lax about it, and those tunnels have existed, and Israel has destroyed many of those tunnel shafts. And the importance, again, of the Philadelphia corridor is Israel can maintain a presence on the ground between Gaza and Egypt in case a terrorist pops up in that area. They can take him out. If they find more tunnel shafts, Israel will then have the ability and the authority to go ahead and destroy those tunnels. So a very significant piece of real estate there separating Gaza and Egypt, which is now, from what I understand, as of yesterday, under full Israeli control. Very significant.
Israel's national security advisor making comments that are circulating now all over social media. There's been a lot of questions after he did say essentially that the war could go on for at least 7 more months. So my question for you, is that any different than what's been said all along? And why are these comments so significant, so important? Why are so many people talking about the comments?
Well, I think this is in line with Prime Minister Netanyahu, who told the Israeli people that 2024 would be a year of war for Israel, and Israel must go full force and destroy Hamas as long as it takes. So that's number one. Number two, the comments in terms of Minister Hanegbi, obviously he has inside information, but I think he's preparing the general public to know that this is not an operation that's going to take overnight. We have to have patience. A lot of people have had enough, understandably. I mean, Israel has been at war for nearly 8 months, and I think he's trying to reassure the Israeli public, actually put a date on the end of the war. Again, I don't have that insight and intelligence that the minister has, that he's obtaining from the IDF directly, but I think he's trying to assure the Israeli public that there will be an end to this war, and Israel will achieve those 3 goals, which the minister said. Number 1, destroying Hamas. Number 2, bringing back our hostages, having them physically being released through force, which Hamas is holding in those tunnels and in the dungeons of Gaza. And at the same time, number 3 is ensuring that Gaza is no longer a threat to the state of Israel. So I think he's putting somewhat of a timeline on that. We'll see if Israel sticks to that timeline, but those 3 goals must be met. Hamas must be eradicated, as I said before, not only for Israel, but for all of Western civilization.
And we talked a bit earlier about the 2 Israeli soldiers that were killed in that car ramming attack, but we also know that 3 Israeli soldiers were killed over in a booby-trapped building over in Rafah during the operation there. Would you say that that kind of shows the dangers that Israel and the troops in general, maybe civilians as well, are dealing with in Rafah?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Hamas is an organization, a terrorist organization, obviously sponsored by Iran. The Iranian octopus is at the top of all the terror organizations: Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis. And this is how they fight. They booby trap buildings. They place arms within civilian populations. They don't wear uniforms. This is not a military versus a military. This is a military versus an organization that dresses as civilians. So it's extremely difficult for Israel to identify who is who, whether they are simply civilians. And I use that term loosely because many of those civilians in Gaza did participate in the October 7th massacre. But the IDF must, in a moment's notice, in the field, designate who is a civilian and who is a terrorist. And unfortunately, in this case, another booby-trapped building. It's not the first time that it's happened, but Israel has to take all the precautions necessary. We've used the elite canine units in the past to go into these buildings to ensure that they are not booby-trapped. And unfortunately, in this case, 3 soldiers lost their lives in one of these structures.
What do you make of the IDF's initial comments after we saw that strike Sunday over in Rafah that reportedly killed dozens of Palestinian civilians there? What do you make of the comments that it was actually a secondary explosion and it may have been caused by a Hamas weapons warehouse in that area?
I have no doubt that the truth will come out and it will be revealed to the world that that, in fact, was a secondary explosion. The IDF has made it clear that the precise target, using low-grade munitions, took out 2 master terrorists. These were evil, evil people. It was a direct strike on their position. And then there were these secondary explosions. And I predicted this several days ago, and now it's coming to light that Hamas is maniacally hiding their weapons and their rockets within civilian populations. You had recorded conversations between people in Gaza saying, oh, we know that this is where Hamas is hiding their weapons. The truth will come to light. If you remember, towards the beginning of the war, there was a Hamas rocket which landed short and people were killed near a hospital in northern Gaza. Immediately, the international community accused Israel of carrying out the strike, and then video evidence and other evidence showed that this was in fact a Hamas rocket which landed short. So I have no doubt in my mind that Hamas is behind this through hiding weapons in civilian populations. And everyone must understand that every death in Gaza, every civilian death is because of Hamas. It's not because of Israel. Israel targets civilians. Hamas hides behind civilians. And I'm very, very confident that this will be proven once again that this was a Hamas weapons depot, which was set ablaze, which caused the secondary explosions and caused the deaths of those people in that tent camp.
One last question for you here about Hezbollah, because we hear so much about Israel, Hamas, and the situation over in Gaza, but it's important to note that over to the north, the, intensification of the attacks by Hezbollah on Israel. There's been a lot of fighting back and forth over the past several months there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I get notifications on my phone nearly hourly that Hezbollah is launching both missiles into Israel and sending over drones in order to try to murder the civilians and soldiers stationed on the northern border. Let's remember that 60,000 Israeli civilians are currently not in their homes. They were pulled out of their homes as Hezbollah continues to bombard the northern communities of Israel. So we are definitely seeing an escalation there. And again, as I said before, this Hezbollah, this is another tentacle of the Iranian regime, and they will have to be dealt with. We cannot accept a situation where our northern border is under attack on an hourly basis. We cannot accept the fact that 60,000 plus of our civilians are living in hotels and other places throughout the country. That is not the way that you can operate a normal life in any country in the world. No one would tolerate this, and we shouldn't either. So Hezbollah will have to be dealt with. I don't know if that will be simultaneously with what's going on in the south with Gaza, but Israel cannot stand back. Let's remember, we had a war against Hezbollah back in 2006, and there was a resolution passed by the UN Security Council, Resolution 1701, following that war, in which Hezbollah was supposed to be disarmed. The UN never enforced that resolution. Hezbollah continues coming up to the Israeli border whenever they please. UNIFIL doesn't do anything, doesn't stop them. They have not been disarmed, and they are trying to escalate the situation on Israel's northern front. It's not acceptable. They will have to be dealt with. They are a maniacal terrorist organization, just like Hamas coming out of Iran.
All right, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here. Is there anything else you want to add before I let you go?
All I'm going to say is that with everything going on, and it's extremely intense on a daily basis here in Israel and different parts of the country, the north, the south, Judea and Samaria, Jerusalem, what have you. But I am confident at the end of the day, Israel will win this war. This is a battle of good versus evil. People need to understand that. And I know a lot of college kids on campuses in the United States have been mixed up and have been taking in this propaganda against the state of Israel. But Israel's on the right side of history. We will come through. We will win this war. And people need to realize that it's good versus evil. It's black and white. And they should be supporting the good guys here, the one and only democracy in the Middle East, the state of Israel. And we do appreciate the fact that the United States, the population, the residents of the United States, nearly 80%, if not more, understand how important our relationship is with the U.S. and the U.S.-Israel relationship. We're the best of friends, and they know that this is a battle of good versus evil, and most of the American population understands that.
All right, Josh, thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.